Welcome to Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. The only podcast where it's okay to talk in band. On this podcast, you will be able to hear conversations with some of the greatest names in wind band conducting, composing, and arranging. We'll also visit with great college, high school, middle school, and elementary band directors to get their thoughts on various aspects of being a band director. We'll have regular check-ins with instrument specialists, music dealers, and instrument repair professionals. And if that's not enough, we'll even have regular conversations with Dr. Tim, who will help keep us motivated. That's Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. And now, here's Charlie.
Welcome to Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. Today is our 16th podcast in the series, and we have two more great conversations to share with you. We'll begin with Mr. Percussion, Kevin Lepper, who is back with us. And Kevin gives us some great ideas on how to prepare percussionists for the fall, be it distance learning, face-to-face, or some sort of modified format. Kevin is always able to break things down to a simple, logical, step-by-step approach that works. And I know you will find his information to be of great value. After Kevin, we'll visit with Dr. Bruce Moss, Director of Bands at Bowling Green State University in Ohio, and Director of the Wheaton, Illinois Municipal Band, one of the nation's finest community bands. Bruce shares his story from growing up in Tennessee to his time with Dr. Harry Beechen at the University of Illinois and doctoral studies with John Painter and Craig Kirchhoff. Bruce is one of the most down-to-earth people I have ever met, and I know you're going to enjoy hearing his story. You know, it's hard to believe that as we release this podcast, we are almost done with the month of June. Before we know it, school bells will be ringing and teachers and students will be back for some sort of learning experience. Unfortunately, we really don't know what to expect. So I guess the only thing that we can do is to expect the unexpected. But the key to making all of this work, making it work for your students, your school, your community, and for you personally, is communication. I can't stress the need enough for you to take the lead in communicating with all of your constituencies. Share ideas, ask questions, and solicit advice. You know, the best phrase I ever heard, and one I use all the time, is to ask for some advice and counsel. Ask your principal, what would you do if you were in my situation? Or, is there anything you're hearing that might be impacting our band classes for the fall? Ask your administrator if there is anything you can prepare to help them as they plan for fall. Just realize that as you are feeling pressure about what's going to happen, your administrator is feeling 10 times the amount of pressure as they take into account all of the facets of running a school. And one more thing is for you to continue an open and frequent line of communication with your school music dealer. If you have not already thought about putting together a plan for the purchase or lease of additional instruments to ensure your students are not sharing them, you may be too late. But then again, it might be a great idea to have it ready, just in case. And be sure that your school-owned instruments have been serviced and sanitized over the summer. Ask your dealer or repair professional to include a note indicating the instrument had been serviced, and be sure to ask them to put a date onto it as to when it was completed. Also, sit down with your dealer and discuss recruitment strategies, ways that you can get students started in band, and ways you can encourage students to continue participation in band. Because your music dealer works with so many schools, they may hear many ways that this is being done. and learning of them may help you think through your own situation so that you can come up with the perfect plan. If along the way you have any questions that you would like answered or topics you would like to have addressed on this podcast, please send an email to bandtalkcharlie@gmail.com. We'll be right back with Kevin Lepper.
Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and Friends is made possible through the support of Hal Leonard, Eastman Musical Instruments, and Vandercook College of Music.
It's always fun to have my buddy Kevin Lepper, Mr. Percussion, joining the podcast, and Kevin is back. I guess this is your third or fourth time on the podcast, Kevin. Welcome back.
Well, thank you. It's very nice to be here with you.
You know, I thought you were the perfect person to get a hold of and have join us, because we're hearing so much about the start of school and the not start of school, and we're going to have marching band and not have marching band. And then yesterday I was listening to the Dan Patrick Show. I listen to that sports show a lot. I love sports. And they had Dr. Fauci on there. And he was talking about the fact that, you know, it's not going to be the same in every state. It's not going to be the same in every locale based upon the number of people that are contracting the coronavirus. So if I'm a high school band director, a middle school band director, and I'm looking towards fall, and I got my percussion out there, like, you know, I'm sure you got plan A, B, C, and D already thought through. So share me some thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, teaching percussion through distance learning is really shouldn't be a big problem, because it gives you the opportunity to work on the techniques that the students are going to use for the rest of the year. So marching band, if they're learning their exercises and their cadence, that's just preparing them for jazz band. It's preparing them for concert band, for solo ensemble. So it won't take really a whole lot to adapt what we would do in person and what we do distance learning. So the first thing is that you would want to get the students some exercises and maybe a cadence and the show music. So you're sort of prepared for wherever you want to go with that. If you don't have exercises, an easy place to get them is the Vic Firth website. Just go to Vic Firth Marching, and they have a whole packet of really nice exercises. Brett Kuhn does a really nice breakdown of different techniques called 30 Seconds to a Better, and then he just takes one little technique. That's on YouTube. It's for innovative percussion. But there's so many resources out there. If you don't have a percussion instructor, those would be really good things to get to. So once you get the music out to the students, like I said, you can either mail it to them, drop it off at their mailbox, do it electronically. Then I think you should start working with videos. So if you or your percussion instructor put together some MP3s with a click track, and the students can now sit there, turn their computer on their drum pad, they can play along with these MP3s. And you should do 3, 4, 5 different tempos. So nice and slow, all the way up to the tempo that you want this to be done for. And then the students can record that. They can send it back to you or to the percussion instructor, and you can evaluate them and give them some feedback. Well, one thing that you'd want to talk to them about in the video is you would want to be able to see their feet as well as their hands. So it's marching band. You definitely want to work on the marching part of things. And so you may even want to make a little demo video for them to watch. So you can say, see how I'm able to see my hands, I'm able to see my feet, and like with the keyboard instruments, you'd want to shoot from the top or the bottom of the keyboard so you could see that, okay, we're hitting in the center of the bar, that kind of thing. So, so they have these videos, and marching and playing is really important. I would probably go, let's send me a video of you playing alone, maybe march and play, and the one I like is sing and play, because you can really tell a lot from a playing standpoint. Was, okay, I'm marching along, can I actually sing the part? In college, when I went to New Mexico State, Tim Lotzenheiser was the band director there, and he would do a new marching show every week. And so we were frantically writing drum parts, getting them out. On Thursday, here would be the audition to whether you could play the show or not. You would have to come into the room, sing the melody of the piece, and march.
Wow.
And as long as you could do that, you were in the show, because you were going to play something that fit the music at least. It may not be perfect, but it would at least fit the show.
So you are actually singing the melody of the music, not the singing the drum part.
Right. Well, at that time, we just sang the melody of the music. But on something like this, either the melody or the drum part would be great. I mean, either one would work. But that just really breaks it down a little bit for the student.
So how important is it to give them some sort of model when you do that? You mentioned like maybe sending them an MP3 with a click track and maybe a video. So are you talking like doing it on Zoom and so they can actually see someone play the drum part with it, or what? What are you thinking?
I think that would be the optimum. So you have your drum instructor play to the MP3, and on Zoom you could have everybody come in, you could mute everybody, or you could have one person play along, something like that. You'd have to see what actually works for you. But yeah, to actually see somebody do it correctly, that's hugely important. Sometimes, you may not have that person who could do that. So, you go to plan B, and plan B is let's work on this together.
That's a good point, because, with a Zoom, you could probably, let's say you got 6 snare drums. You could have all 6 on the Zoom call at the same time. You could be watching them, watching their stick heights, watching their hand position, all that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can get so much done via Zoom or Skype or whatever you use. Another thing that a lot of people do when they're preparing their show music is they use the same video concept, but they will send out a PDF or of the full score of music and then the MP3. So the student is able to hear the whole show, usually with a MIDI in a MIDI concept. And then they send out just percussion parts. And then they send out the individual parts. So the student can hear the big context, and then they can just keep honing down. Oh, okay, here's what the percussion just sounds like. And then here's what the snare drum sounds like. Or here's what bass drum 1 sounds like playing to the music. Here's what bass drum 2 sounds like. And so by bringing it down like that, the student really has the big picture all the way down to the small picture.
Yeah, that the bass drum, I was going to ask you that question because from my whole experience, it always seems like the very best percussionists are playing snare drum. There's the guys with all the chops. And then, like in every group, once you get down past the first 5, 6, 7 kids, the talent level starts sinking a little bit. And oftentimes those are the kids that end up on bass drum. They're probably younger. They're a little bit less experienced. And they probably need the most help. So what kind of ideas would you have to make sure that you could bring them along?
Well, yeah, again, you're exactly right. I mean, the bass drum, and if we think about it, the bass of the band, what really everybody is supposed to be listening to, those are not usually our strongest players. So I would start out with each of them playing usually the bottom or the top part, because those are usually the two, especially the bottom, is the least rhythmic challenging. And then a lot of your syncopation is going to come in from those middle parts. And those are going to be your toughest ones. So I would start everybody out with, again, an MP3, maybe a click track with 8th note subdivision or 16th note subdivision, and just have it very slow so they can play to that subdivision. and then gradually increase it. So maybe go from bass drum 4 part to a bass drum 2 part to a bass drum 3 part. Sometimes bass drum 1 is doubling the snare drum. So you got to have a pretty good player on that one. Sometimes it all depends on how it's written. But I think if I were the band director or the drum instructor, I would be just getting with those people more. Everybody else, I would maybe check in once a week. Those guys, I may make a concerted effort to put a couple times a week. And what also is really cool, and it helps everybody bond, is if your section leader is involved. So, let's say your best snare drummer, that's your section leader. If he or she could be involved with Zoom calls to those younger students, or if you have a bass drum section leader, if they could be involved, that goes a long way, because now they're not trying to learn this on their own. They have somebody who they're sharing with. And you could do it Zoom, or if they feel comfortable sitting in their backyard 6 feet apart with their mask on, hey, they could sit there and play during the afternoon. That's much better than trying to do it on your own.
Yeah, and as a teacher, if you've got a good section leader and you do a Zoom call and you get them kind of set up, then in the interim, I mean, your section leader could set up a Zoom call with those bass drummers and help them too, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that just makes your section so much stronger, because now your section leader has some real skin in the game. And it may be section leaders. You may have a snare drum person, a tenor person, a bass drum person, a pit person. But then when we all get together, well, then they have they actually have some skin in the game. So I really like that.
Yeah, and the director's going to have to take some time to sit down with the section leader to make sure he kind of coaches the section leader on how to coach, what to say, what not to say. Don't go there if this happens. If the kids are having a problem, don't go there, because it's got to be encouraging for those kids at this point.
Absolutely, especially with your the newer players. They're walking into this situation and they're sort of scared out of their wits, because they're making a change coming from junior high school to high school. They don't know a lot of people. You really have to take it easy on those guys.
So let me circle back. You talked about singing and playing the snare drum part. If I've got a bass drum part, am I going to be singing all 4 parts? Am I going to be going like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4? Is that how I'm going to sing the part, or am I going to just sing my own?
You can do either one, and both of them are beneficial. So usually when you're learning a bass drum part within a show, you have the students say exactly that. You can listen to the whole line, or you can just listen to your part. I usually start out with the whole line, so they hear the whole concept. And I really liked what you were doing. 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4. Love that. Okay, because now they get to hear how the drums are going up or down the line. And then I'd have them sing their own part. But both of them are really important to do. See, I think what we're talking about here is we're actually going to do more teaching this way than we would if we had the students just in the band room. I think you're going to get a whole lot more done this way.
I think you're right. Kevin, this is just great stuff. I'm telling you what, I just love having you on the podcast. You always give people something to think about. You got any final thoughts, other things that you might have people do during this time?
Yeah, I think that if the band director or percussion instructor could get into the school, if they could already have the drum equipment inventoried and tuned, that would save a lot of time when the students actually hit whatever that first rehearsal day is. And so I know that some schools you can't get into, but instead of spending the first 2 days on let's go through equipment, you can actually be playing. And then, if we have to stand 6 feet apart with masks, that's not the worst thing in the world for percussion. A parade block, how far are you apart in a parade block? About 6 feet, aren't you?
Well, we know bad drill writers have been putting percussion at all sorts of places for a long time.
Yeah. Well, that's right too. That's right. We own the back of the field for a long time here.
The old elevator percussion section, back and forth and back and forth. Oh man,
That's
those are
right.
the days.
But you can do a lot with not having us set right next to each other. That's what I'm saying.
That's great. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us. We're going to do this again.
Okay, buddy. You take care.
God bless, buddy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. There is not a better percussion teacher anywhere than Kevin Lepper. He is an incredible resource and one of the most humble people I have ever had the honor to know and work with. Kevin and I go back to 1974 when I met him at the University of Missouri. He amazed me then, and he continues to amaze me to this day. And in case you're interested, Kevin also has a company called Advantage Network. His website is www.advantagenetworkinc.com. I encourage you to visit. You'll learn more about Kevin, and I promise that website will bring a smile to your face. We'll be right back with Dr. Bruce Moss.
Today's podcast is made possible through the support of Hal Leonard, publisher of the Essential Elements Method for Band and the Essential Elements interactive website that is free for Essential Elements users. Essential Elements Interactive, or EEI, is a state-of-the-art, cloud-based support program that is constantly evolving to provide you and your students with more information and resources to help them learn and have fun while doing so. To learn more about EEI, visit EssentialElementsInteractive.com.
So every once in a while in this profession, you come across somebody that automatically you connect with. And our next guest is exactly that person. And before I welcome him to the podcast, I have to recall a story that we were both judging a contest at a state, a neighboring state. Let's just keep it there. And it was a long day of judging bands. And for those of you that have judged bands, you've all had those long days of judging bands where at the end, you're just like, man, you're totally exhausted. And I remember we got back to the hotel and we got out of the car. And I looked at him and I said, I am ready for a bathtub full of margaritas. And he started laughing, and his laugh is so infectious. And I mean, we'd already connected, but at that point in time, I said, man, this guy is my new best friend. And so I'm welcoming him to the podcast today. He is the one and only Dr. Bruce Moss. Bruce, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Charlie, and thanks for having me. I remember that laughter very well. That may have been the first time we met. If not, because that was way back in the late 90s. If not, I had not known you for very long at that point.
Well, it was great. By the way, have you ever finished that bathtub full of margaritas, or are you still working on it?
Never have. I'm waiting for you.
I'll be there. As soon as this COVID thing passes, I'm there for you. Okay. So Bruce, give us a little background on where you grew up and where you went to high school.
I grew up in Kingsport, Tennessee. It's a wonderful community up in the northeastern tip of the state. Very fortunate to have had a wonderful education. The community supports education and music very, very well. And that's where I started my music career at the elementary school there.
So what instrument did you start on?
I played trumpet, just by chance. Actually, I got into band by chance. My family and friends have heard the story many times, but I'll tell it to you. I was in the 6th grade at Abraham Lincoln Elementary School, and band had started and I had not gotten involved in it. And one of my buddies sat next to me in that class. I can still remember what the classroom looked like. Said, hey, if you'll just come down and join band, we can get out of doing something else. I can't remember what it was. So I went home and I asked my parents. They had a very close family friend whose son had already gone to college, and they had a trumpet. And that's kind of how it all began. And if it were not for that friend of mine, my mother frequently reminds me, she just had her 98th birthday. She said, "Where would you be if it were not for Steve Bingham?" And he was the friend of mine who pulled me out of class to join band. I think I would be teaching, but I don't know if I would be in music. I always wanted to be a teacher.
That's a great story, man. That is a great story. So what do you remember from your band days in Tennessee?
Well, elementary and junior high were fabulous. We had wonderful teachers, and I had a couple of wonderful high school band directors. I went to Dobbins-Bennett High School, still has an outstanding program, and it had for generations before. The fact is, I was drum major of that band my senior year, as was my father, who went to that high school in the 30s.
Wow.
You can see a picture of him in the drum major outfit right behind me. And we have shared a lot of that history. And I am very thankful and grateful to that community for instilling a love of music in me.
So how did you get from Dobbins-Bennett High School in Tennessee to the University of Illinois, where you got your bachelor's degree?
Well, that's an interesting story. I had a trumpet tutor who taught me private lessons on trumpet. $2 for a half an hour. I can still remember Mother putting those quarters in my hand if I didn't have them. And he happened to have been in the Army with Dr. Harry Bejan. And I was afraid of going to University of Illinois at that point in time because it was so large, and I wasn't sure if I had the stuff to make it in music or at such a large school. So I went to Middle Tennessee State for a couple of years and had a terrific experience there. Joe T. Smith was the band director, and it was a very quality program. But my trumpet teacher had always nudged me. He said, if you think you can pull this off, it would be great if you could be with my friend Harry Bejan. And he wrote him a letter and introduced me. And I ended up going to Illinois and graduating from Illinois, knowing very little about it, knowing little of the history of the music ed program there, which of course is very well known, and knowing literally nothing about the history of the band program at University of Illinois and the legacy there, and knowing virtually nothing about Harry Bejan. I mean, it was just one of these connects that was life-changing.
Yeah, he was such an icon in the profession. And you know, I didn't know him when I was like teaching high school, but when I got to Vandercook and he had retired from Illinois, we got to be really, really, really close friends. And I could just always sense his passion for making music. You got any stories you remember from your days with the Beej?
Oh, there's many stories.
Any you can tell?
I was listening to your podcast with Robert Reynolds a couple of days ago, and you asked him about stories about Dr. Ravelli. And Dr. Bejan was very, very demanding. He was very passionate. He had extremely high expectations. And there was a level of discipline and commitment that just permeated the ensemble. And it was a very good thing for me to learn. Not that I was a goof off at the time. I mean, I was very serious already by this time. But the demands and the stories that he would tell about his past, about Cass Technical High School, and about the legendary history of University of Illinois are things I will always remember.
So you graduated from Illinois, and then where was your first job?
I was hired as an assistant band director at York High School in Elmhurst.
Wow.
That
was a great school.
It's a wonderful school, and that was another one of those just happenstance stories. I had applied. At that time, almost everybody at University of Illinois wanted to teach in the suburbs because, as I recall, you could get a pay grade that got up to could be $10,000 a year, and that was just unheard of for any of us to be able to make that kind of money. I can't remember if I did at the beginning, but we were all looking for jobs in the suburbs. I had an offer in Elgin, I remember, and then at the last second, this job opened at York High School. It was an assistant job with the duties of being an assistant band director and teaching 2 jazz bands and a guitar class or 2 of all things. So there was a big learning curve there for me.
Who was the head director there at that time?
Well, it was Rick Blatty, who had just taken over that job. He was Vern Reamer's assistant for 2 years. Rick came from Northwestern, and we just hit it off. And I am proud and honored to say that we have been best friends ever since that experience. He was not there for very long. He left and went to Albion College in Michigan. But he thought when we got together and we went through the interview process, he just has always told me I had a gut feeling that this could work. And I don't think any of us at that time could have predicted, particularly having worked closely together, on the heels of a very legendary band program that was very set in a certain way with Vern Reamer, and he had been there a very long time. And to follow Vern as Rick did took some patience and understanding, and for me to still be on the heels of that when Rick left also took some patience and understanding. But it was fabulous, and Rick and I have been best of friends still to this day.
So Rick went from Albion then to Ohio State.
Ohio State is Craig Kirchhoff's assistant.
Yeah.
Right after I left, I had worked with Craig two wonderful years of my life, at finishing up my doctorate before I went into college teaching. Uh-huh. Rick came in as Craig's assistant, and if you know Rick, he's such a likable guy, an organized and terrific administrative kind of mind. And he went on to head that School of Music before he retired a couple of years ago.
Wow. So let's go back. So what do you remember about your first day in front of your first band at York High School?
Well, I got to think on that a minute. They had a program. It was called Summer Band, but it culminated in what was called an ice cream social. And it was an event that the band parents used to raise money, a very popular outdoor concert where they sold ice cream to hundreds of people because it had grown so much over the years in popularity. And I was introduced at that concert, and I conducted my first number with that summer band, and then subsequently moved into the fall. The summer band, incidentally, as I learned, having taught at York, and I learned it through Rick, but I also learned it through Vern Reamer because his legacy was there in all the file cabinets. He knew he had a mission to keep those students playing over the summer, and this is how he did it. He did it kind of with an iron hand, but the mission to making money was so that in those days, many students went to what is called ISYM. I think it still exists, Illinois Summer Youth Music. And it was a 2-week camp. Vern and Rick also knew that the more kids they could get down there learning, and the more they could keep them playing, the better band they were going to have in the fall, which proved true year in and year out.
So how long were you at York then, Bruce?
Well, I was there for 5 years, and then I took a year off. I started my doctorate with Mr. Painter at Northwestern, a fabulous year. And I was one of his grad assistants. And after that year, the department head at York left unexpectedly, and took his first university job, and the principal asked me to come back and be department chair. And so I had to make a decision of whether I would continue the doctorate or try to continue it long distance, or go and take that experience of heading up the department. And I went back and I ended up staying another 5 years. The doctorate kind of got put on hold. And by this time I was into my mid-30s, and actually a former professor of mine from University of Illinois, who subsequently had moved to Ohio State, Dr. Jerry Forsyth, he called me and he said, Craig Kirchhoff is here and I'm here, and if you're going to get your doctorate, you really need to start thinking about it. And we could possibly get you a fellowship here, which they did, and I went. This was the fall of '87, I believe, and I ended up staying there for 2 years and finished, and had a wonderful experience with Craig. So I had Craig's mentorship, Jerry Forsyth, who had brought me and connected me with Craig, was a music ed faculty member at Ohio State. He's since retired. And John Painter and Harry Beejan. I mean, I just could not think of a better team of mentors, and very eclectic, very different, each in their own way, but each had such passion and drive and curiosity and imagination in what they did. It just oozed off, and I hope I got a little of it from all of them.
Well, that's a who's who of people that you had a chance to study with. My God. So what are you most proud of looking back at your days at York? You had great success there. And you look back and you go like, man, this is the capstone. This is the thing that I'm proudest of.
Well, there are 3 or 4 things, but the one that always comes to mind is an experience we had with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. And this story goes down in the books because it's told a lot when people ask. I got a call one day from the CSO office, and I really thought they were pulling my leg. It was a friend of mine that worked in administration, Martha Gilmer, who now heads up the San Diego Symphony. Her husband, Bill, who was a band director and was an assistant band director for me at York for a while, was a connection for me and Martha. And she called and said, we're doing a contemporary piece, and Leonard Slatkin, who is conducting, wants a team of high school students in the audience, and we thought they should come from York High School. And I just was flabbergasted, and I really thought she was pulling my leg. But they really meant it. There was a piece that Donald Erb had written called Prismatic Variations. I can still remember it. And it called for young people to be dispersed throughout the audience without the audience's knowledge, with various kinds of instruments. I can't remember, they weren't like band instruments, but they were things such as triangles or small percussion things that could be hidden. And there sound effect type things, possibly wine glasses and things of that nature with that could be hummed. But we went and did these rehearsals with Leonard Slatkin, and it just turned out to be a wonderful thing for the students and for the school and community. And one of the surprises to me is we get down there, and I thought, I would be kind of directing the students from the audience or giving some sort of cue from the sidelines when they needed to come in, because they had no music. It was all guided from the stage. And to my surprise, Maestro Slatkin said, oh no, up here with me. And we literally were on the podium together maneuvering this particular song. Subsequently, I got to know Donald Erb, and he wrote a symphony for the band later. I had already left when it was completed. That was one of the wonderful experiences that I had there.
Yeah. So while you're at York, is that when you took over as conductor of the Wheaton Municipal Band?
Yes, it is, and that was sort of by chance. Um, there was one summer where there was a transition and conductors, a director had left, a director had not been there very long and had to break his contract at the beginning of the summer. I don't think he was from the area, a person I never got to know, but they decided for the rest of the summer to invite people in to take a concert. That was in the summer of '79. And that's how all that began. And the fall of '79, I was asked to take it over for a year or two. What I thought was going to be a year or two. I had no idea it would last this long. Fact is, when I went to get my doctorate, I figured, we'll wind this thing down here. It's been a great summer job, fabulous community, fabulous players, and just a wonderful time all the way around. But it just happened that I just kind of kept doing it over the years. And when I moved to Bowling Green, the mayor at the time said, "Well, let's just try it for a little bit longer and see what happens." And it has just worked. So 40 years later, actually 41, if it were not for COVID, which I'm not sure of, that'll come up later in the conversation, I'm sure. We're still every June getting ready to crank up that band in Wheaton.
I do have a couple more questions about the Wheaton Band. But I'll come back to that in just a minute. You went on from York to go to Eastern Illinois, and then you went from Eastern Illinois on to Bowling Green. So what was your motivation to jump from high school to college?
I think there was a side of me that always wanted to be a college director, or at least try it. I tell my students all the time in our music ed classes that I could have lived my life out at York and been happy as a clam. I really loved high school teaching, but I'm the kind of guy that I think would have kicked myself if I had not tried the college route. And I did, in the bottom of my heart, always want to get a doctorate. I told my dad I would try to do that, and he had supported me all the way through undergrad and my master's degree. And it was just something I wanted to do. But I could have, had the cards not played out the way they did, I could have landed back in high school in the Chicago suburbs. That could have happened had not everything lined up at that particular time when Eastern Illinois came along.
So you studied with like legendary people, like a who's who. You had Bijan, you had Painter, you had Craig Kirchhoff, and then you go to Bowling Green and you follow the chief, Mark Kelly. So what was that like?
It was actually a wonderful experience. I won't say it was without its challenges. As we're all reminded, I mean, everybody follows somebody. And Mark embraced me in his own classy way. I think knowing that I was going to be a different paradigm, a different model from him, he ran a wonderful program, tremendously organized. I tell students to this day, I still look in his files, in his file drawers, a lot of which we're moving over to his family now. But there is always something that I can learn from the legacy of Mark Kelly. He wrote a letter to everyone in our conference when I came, embracing me and supporting me. And we were we had a unique relationship, I would say. It was difficult at the start because I think in his own way, Mark would have liked to have stayed longer. And he was just totally absorbed in band like so many of us are. And it was hard for him to break away initially. I think he would have admitted that, and I think he did admit it to me. But over the years, we became very close. In the early years, I sought his counsel very, very frequently with all things about college band directing and politics within the the music school and the university, as you might imagine.
It's reported that John Painter said that Mark Kelly was the best band director he ever watched work. That's a pretty high compliment, don't you think?
That is, and I think John and Mark were very close friends. They worked together on the Midwest board together, and the organizational skills of Mark were what were just dumbfounding. You just don't see things like this today. Just the detail work, the minutia of detail that I would call it like no stone unturned. For instance, any kind of marching band trip. If I want, the first time Bowling Green went to a bowl game since I came to Bowling Green, first thing I did is I went back and looked at the last time Mark Kelly took a band, the marching band, to a bowl game. And to the detail, every single thing that needed to be done was in that file. And when, and how far out, and who you contact. And I could literally just draw out all the memos and it was all done. He was that good at the organizational side of the craft.
So we talked about you're the director at the Wheaton Municipal Band, a great band. It's one of the finest community bands in the country. Can you give us a little short history of the band, Bruce?
Well, you're very kind to call it that. We are very proud of it. I'm proud to be a part of it, and I'm certainly proud of all the members. The band started in 1930. It recently had its 90th birthday. It had 19 players in it when it all got going. I don't know the lineage, but at some point in time, there was a little bit of a tax increment put in with the city to help fund it in a very, very small way. And so there's a little bit of pay involved. It's summer only, and it has evolved. I mean, just as a beautiful organization, not only a city tradition, but I think really a kind of model for how something like this can be a connect musically and as an entertainment value and as a family value and as a slice of Americana for a community. And it just so happens that that community is kind of perfect for it. It's an idyllic park setting. And over the years, we've been able to instigate behind the screen auditions and a tenure system. And probably 60% of our players come back every summer. And our mission is it works to entertain the audience, to please and musically gratify the players, and to support the city, what they call their crown jewel, and in downtown in the summers.
So we know that the Wheaton Band is, you have you have auditions for players and things like that, but there's a lot of community bands throughout the country. What's so important about the concept of community bands, in your opinion?
Well, let's relate it to COVID for a second.
Okay.
It's going to mean more than ever once we get back from all of this. What it does for the citizens who come from far and near just to relax, and there's an entertainment value. I mean, there's a musical and an artistic value, but there is definitely an entertainment value. So much so that there have been generations of families that come. It's not unlike for me every summer to have a 40 or a 50-year-old person come up and say, my mom brought me to this, and here are my children, and here are my grandchildren. It's just part of a wonderful city tradition. But I think what it gives the players and the audience is very special. It's a break away from everything, really, and it's just a chance to sit back and enjoy good music played well in somewhat of an entertaining way. I mean, it's not all serious, but it's not all fun and games either.
So I understand before the COVID-19 happened, this was going to be a special year for the Wheaton Band. You mentioned the anniversary of it, but will you share with us what the city did for the band and what your plans were for the summer?
The city last summer tore down our old band shell. It was built in 1952, I believe, and just finished within the last month a brand new band shell. And unfortunately, it's going to lie dormant for a little while. The health officials have insisted that nothing will happen in the park at least through June and July. We might be able to pick up something or do some sort of opening concert in August. We had a lot planned that was going to happen on June 11th. James Stevenson has written a new fanfare for us. Douglas Yayo, the former bass trombone with the Boston Symphony, now lives in the area, and he played in the Wheaton Band actually as a high school student. He was set to solo, and a lot of this we've just had to put on hold and until such time that we can do it. But I think it'll be even more meaningful when the day comes.
So a big part of your Wheaton Band programming is bringing in some of the finest band conductors and musicians in the nation to conduct and perform with the band. So when did that tradition start? And give us an idea who some of the luminaries have been that has had an opportunity to work with the band.
That concept started pretty much when I took over, and you're one of the luminaries. I went back after you asked me to do this and found you on that list in 2007. We've had many military conductors, many major university band conductors. Frederick Fennell was out many times. He was good friends with Bill Ludwig, who played in the band before his passing. That's Bill Ludwig Jr.
Uh-huh.
And always good times there on the 4th of July. I can distinctly remember Fred Fennell on the 4th of July parade getting suited up and at age 84 marching with a snare drum with William Ludwig in our 4th of July parade.
Wow.
It just speaks to what he was all about. Nothing more needs to be said. And wonderful 4th of July parties at Bill's house, because Fred and Bill were very close friends from Interlochen. And oftentimes they would get together in the summer at those occasions. So many major university band conductors, and some that I still want in, by the way, that I just haven't been able to get in for whatever reason. But the military conductors from most all the branches have been. Oftentimes we'll ask a military conductor. We started this with John Bourgeois. We had several students that had left the Wheaton Band and had made the Marine Band, and we brought them all back together. That was wonderful human interest. But Lowell Graham has been out, Colonel Gabriel, John Bourgeois, Tim Foley, Michael Coburn, Larry Lang, to name a few of the military leaders. And for fear of omission, I don't want to start.
That's okay.
The college band directors, but I will say that early on, William Ravelli was in our park as a weave-in to a film we made on the life of John Philip Sousa, which actually went international on PBS. That was produced for WGBH in Boston for the American Experience. So we've been very, very fortunate and over the years, and are very, very thankful for that, because sometimes the budget is stripped, and when it gets to airlines and things get tight, just like with any civic group. We've got to watch the pennies very carefully, and over the years there have been waves of good and bad budgets.
Yeah, the musicians in your group are really terrific, and a lot of them are teachers. A lot of them are music teachers who play in the summer. So what do you want them to take away from that experience? When that high school band director or that middle school, elementary school band director, or even a professional person who plays an instrument comes and they're a member of the Wheaton Band, what do you want them to take away from it?
One of the things is an ability to move quickly and react quickly to musical and technical issues. It's no secret that we put together concerts very quickly, and the band subsequently reads very well. But embedded in all of that, every week I plan a rehearsal strategy, and really I plan it with those teachers in mind, so that they can, even though it's faster pace, that they can try to take something from rehearsals and what they're hearing around the band. I mean, the band's very good, but they're not perfect by any means. They have all the problems that other bands have. They have pitch problems. They have the heat when it's 95 degrees that they deal with. They have technical demands, unison, ensemble, balance, and blend. All of those issues are a part of it. And I hope that each week, players sitting inside of it all can gain from that experience. Plus, they love being able to put together concerts very quickly. And if I might be so bold, I think players just love being appreciated. And crowds come in the thousands to hear the group. And the band is, they would have all serious music if they could. But I think that when they see that they are so appreciated, if they let their hair down and play Leroy Anderson, Blue Tango, or whatever, they say, hey, this has its place in all of this too.
So Bruce Moss, I know that to paraphrase a line in the Blues Brothers movie, you're anxious to get the band back together, and I hope that happens soon. I really appreciate you taking some time and joining us on the podcast, and I can't wait to see you again, pal.
Charlie, I can't thank you enough for doing this and for thinking of me and for doing this entire project. It's fabulous. I'm going to have lots of things to listen to, and I've already started. And I think the angle that you're using and the types of people, the variety of types of people you are bringing in are just of tremendous interest to band directors everywhere, and helping us through this unusual and very demanding time in our lives for band directors, because frankly, none of us are really sure where everything's going to head with social distancing and all of the matters ahead of us with college football and classrooms and classroom sizes. It's going to be an interesting year ahead of us. But this is a nice break and a great enjoyment for me to be able to talk to you and share and reminisce more than a little bit I have. And I thank you for it.
And my pleasure. Take care, my friend.
Thank you, Charlie. Good to talk to you.
Bruce Moss is the kind of person you just want to sit down and visit with. He has great stories to tell and is one of the kindest people you will ever meet. And since our conversation, I learned the Wheaton Band will be streaming concerts at 7:30 p.m. on Thursday evenings. That's Central Time. And you can access it at wheatonmunicipalband.org. And you can enjoy their We're Still Here concert series. And for those of you in the Chicago area, there is some talk they may get to open their new band shell in August with a live performance. Wouldn't that be great? Well, that's Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. Next week, our guests will include Dr. Danielle Gaudry, Assistant Professor of Music at California State University, East Bay, where she serves as Director of Bands and Coordinator of Instrumental Music. And we'll have a visit with Dr. Tim Lotzenheiser, who will give us some perspective on where everything is headed. That's Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. If you would like to send a question to Charlie or have a comment, please send an email to bandtalkcharlie@gmail.com. We hope you will let your colleagues, students, and friends know about Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to being with you again soon.